Let's welcome back to the show South Carolina Congresswoman Representative Nancy Mace. Okay, it's great to see you. It's good to have you back on. Listen, people know that getting sick with COVID is 1,000 times worse than it is to get vaccinated. I'm quoting Dr. Brett Giroir. People get that. Tell us why you and Senator Kevin Cramer are saying that any state forcing a COVID vaccine passport must also require voter ID if they want to continue getting election funds from the government. Why do you support this?
Well, voter ID is a wildly popular idea, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Vaccine passports, on the other hand, are a wildly unpopular idea with American citizens. I'm against mandates for masks and vaccinations. And so for any state, and right now there are 4, we have Hawaii, California, Oregon, and New York, who are trying to implement some form of vaccine passport just for you to go on about your day-to-day activities in life. So for those states who are going to do that, we ought to require that you have a voter ID to vote in a federal election. I can think of no more better or equivalent kind of legislation if municipalities and states and counties are going to require a vaccine passport. Well, gee, you should have a voter ID to also vote in those states.
You know, 20 states, including North Dakota, are saying no to vaccine passports. The White House is considering vaccine passports for interstate travel. They're setting it aside for now as potentially too polarizing. I think the point is, and I think you're saying if politicians are comfortable forcing people to show their private medical records to simply go to a restaurant, then they should be fine having people to prove who they are if they're going to vote. I mean, you
Right.
basically need you need some kind of ID to go to the doctor, to cash a paycheck, to get a job, to buy a car, and more. What do you say?
Well, we had a hearing and oversight just a few weeks ago with some of the Democrats that ran away from Texas, to talk about how voting restrictions like voter ID would oppress certain types of voters. And that could be further from the truth. 72% of Democrats support voter ID. And of course, Republicans and independents are much higher than that. If you're going to have to show, like you said, your medical records to just go to the grocery store, enter a restaurant, then you ought to show and prove that you're a citizen of the United States. There's a lot of debate right now on the integrity of our elections. I can think of no better way than to proving you're a citizen in order to vote in an election. So for states like California and New York, they don't have voter ID. So if you're going to institute vaccine passports, you sure as heck should have voter ID in a federal election. It's pretty simple. And it's pretty common sense, and I think it would be popular with the American people.
And polls show minorities say yes to voter ID, too. You know, what are your thoughts about this? The New York Times reporting only 28% of black New Yorkers aged 18 to 44 are vaccinated. So if you have a COVID passport, that means nearly 3/4 of young black New Yorkers would be denied the right to work in restaurants, gyms, theaters here in New York City. What do you say?
Well, 75% of Black Americans, I will agree, they support voter ID. And I'm really sick and tired of reading articles that are not backed up by science or data that say it's only Republicans not getting vaccinated. There are other communities, black, brown, white, purple, green, you name it, educated and uneducated, that are not getting vaccinated, that are hesitant. And I think it's due in large part to information or disinformation or improper, wrong, or false, or even lying to the American people by CDC and officials like Dr. Fauci. We've sowed distrust in vaccinations that can save lives, that can keep people out of the hospital, that can keep people from dying from especially the Delta variant of COVID-19. And so you're absolutely right. This is going to disenfranchise so many people, not just white Republicans, but everybody across the spectrum, no matter your color, your gender, or your political affiliation. And it's violating. It should be a violation of the Constitution to violate your rights like that.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace, it's good to see you. Come back soon.
As always, thank you, Elizabeth.